Please be seated. Agenda item number 1. We ask the Council to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Show of hands, please. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. I'll say that afterwards. Agenda item 2, apologies. Councillor Barnfather, do you have any apologies?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I still have apologies from Councillor Nigel Turner and Councillor Philip Owen, both medical stroke illness, and as you can see, Councillor Jackson has now joined us. Thank you.
You got that? Yep. Councillor Henry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we still have apologies for Councillor Sheila Place, who is ill, and Councillor Penny Gollan and Councillor Clark have medical appointments this morning, but they will be joining us later.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've still got apologies from Councillor Deakin for personal reasons. She may be joining us shortly.
Thank you. We move on then to agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Again, if any councillor or officer has either a disclosable pecuniary interest or a private interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest, and when called to speak, you should state whether it is a disclosable pecuniary interest or a private interest and give brief details. Any? Councillor Henry.
I'm not quite sure whether or not this is an interest or not, but item number 7, my partner works for the authority, and if we were to approve this recommendation, then she'll benefit from that. Okay. Yeah. I do want it to happen.
It's not pecuniary though, is it? No. Yeah. 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 I think that's a non-pecuniary interest, Councillor Henry. So you may stay in and vote. Anyone else? No. Item 4 is Chairman's business. It's been quite a busy time since the last council meeting. I won't bore you all with all the functions that we've attended, but there's a couple of note, and in that we actually met with a member of the royal family last week, the Duke of Gloucester, who attended not only Southwell Minster, but also Patchings and another appointment in the county. Charming man, and he spent more time than he was supposed to, but he still managed to keep his itinerary going. We've been to several civic functions, and earlier this week I attended a civic reception at Bassetlaw for the Wampanoag people from Massachusetts, who were the tribe that actually met up with the Pilgrim Fathers when they first landed. And there are still, I understand, some 3,000 of them left in the Massachusetts area. They're over here on a cultural exchange for a week, supported by the Arts Council, this council, and by the District Council. And any of you who've got any spare time on Saturday, they're going to be dancing around there. I don't know what they call it. It's not a wigwam. It's built out of wood and animal skin. So they've actually erected. Sorry.
It was a way to.
A way to. That's it. So if any of you have got any time to visit the museum at Bassetlaw on Saturday, you can see a real life Indian tribe carrying out their traditions rather than what we see on the telly. Other than that, I don't think I've got anything else I wish to say, except we're going to have another very busy weekend this weekend, in that we have a reception in Retford for a healthy event, encouraging people to move, and there's a veterans event in Worksop. We're having a small drinks reception, as you know, to welcome our new alderman at approximately at 12 o'clock. All members are invited, and the 1 hour lunch break will be approximately 12:30, and we will reconvene again at 1:30. Agenda item 5, constituency issues. I remind you that there is a time limit of 15 minutes for this item, and each member may only speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. I've got 4 speeches on my list today. First of all, Councillor Paul Henshaw.
Thank you, Councillor Quigley. Members, few towns in Nottinghamshire are richer in the matter of charities and beneficiaries than Mansfield. In what people used to call the good old days, the pious seem to have vied with each other to leave a proportion of their wealth, in some cases all of their wealth, to the poor of the town or to the church. Many of the charities have been lost, but there are still a considerable number in existence, such as the Faith Clarkson charity and the one that I want to directly report, the Brunts charity. The Brunts charity was founded in Mansfield in 1711 by bequest from Mr. Samuel Brunt, who was called a gentleman of the town. The charity office is based at the corner of Tootill Lane and Leeming Street in the centre of Mansfield. And if you look up, you can see the statue of Samuel resplendent in his 18th century costume and clothing. It's governed by 11 trustees from the Mansfield area and provides almost 150 almshouses and properties with 3 locations in the town. I'm fortunate to have one of these locations in my division. On the Champion Crescent and one on Samuel Close off of Broomhill Lane. The Brunts charity isn't a care home establishment. It promotes independent living with a safeguarding environment, and many of the residents live an independent life through working in the community. We have contact with adult social services who provide and help with care support packages. I must take this opportunity to publicly thank the staff for their hard work and dedication to the residents during the COVID pandemic. All the wardens, trustees and support staff have worked tirelessly to ensure the residents were safe. The team's day-to-day contact has reduced the residents' anxiety and reduced their loneliness. Council, I cannot speak too highly of the Brunts charity and the work they do. The charity can be assured of my continued support in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. I call on Councillor Elizabeth Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many of the complaints I receive relate to our highways. It's not just about the state of our roads and pavements. Many of the complaints I receive are about road safety. I'm aware we have a motion later on that deals with the aspects of this, so I won't labour my points. The journey along Long Lane from Main Road in Watnall, close to the mini roundabout, to Hucknall is a death trap for cyclists with no cycle lane. Residents from Watnall, Greasley and places like Bovale and Moor Green tell me that the route into Ashfield and beyond is a nightmare. With no cycle lane until you get into Hucknall, they quite rightly ask why a racetrack like Long Lane has no provision for a cycle lane. Colleagues may be aware of a serious accident close to Long Lane in Watnall in November last year. A cyclist was rushed to QMC following a collision at 2:30 in the afternoon. Fortunately, the injuries were not life-threatening, but a driver was killed this September after colliding with a van in Watnall close to Long Lane, with a number of cyclists talking about near misses. So we need action now. Encouraging residents to lead a healthier lifestyle and leave their cars at home is a corporate priority for this council, especially in the light of the climate emergency that was unanimously declared at the full council meeting at the end of May. The safety of the B6009 is a huge concern for residents in my division, especially with the huge amount of heavy goods vehicles that use the road. It may come as a surprise to many that HGVs are still on our roads and they remain a problem on Long Lane, and this will only get worse. The 60-mile-an-hour limit is not adhered to by many, and cyclists tell me they are afraid to use the road, so don't bother travelling into places like Hucknall and their environs across the county. Long Lane doesn't have a cycle lane, cycle path, whatever you want to call it, unlike places in Hucknall, and it desperately needs one. We do need more to promote safe cycling across our county to benefit health, improve social mobility, cut emissions and much more. If we don't act fast, we could face a serious accident or worse. We need to do everything to ensure our roads are fit for all road users, including cyclists, and at the moment, Long Lane does the opposite, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Tom Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. I rise today to speak about a constituent of mine, Brock Warren, who is an exceptional student mentioned to me by his drama teacher at Ashfield School in the performing arts. And one question that happened was he got accepted into a renowned drama school in London, and it was made obvious, very clear to me, that the funding wasn't available to support his transition from a deprived area like Huthwaite to be able to take up his offer of the course. And experienced members and new will be aware that the County Council offer funding for sports athletes, particularly the ones high up in their field. Yet we don't have a similar funding pot for particularly recognised arts young people. And it was certainly evident to me with Brock's case that this is something we need to look at, particularly from more deprived parts of the county where families aren't able to pay hundreds of pounds. Sometimes is the obstacle, like in Brock's case, and then thousands of pounds in other. But we offer that support for sport, to be clear, but not arts. Recently, the council, a number of years ago, pulled the funding from the theatre in Nottingham. And I hope this isn't a trend where we aren't going to support the arts. And I know Conservative colleagues have passion about the arts. I mean, I represent local government on the Culture, Tourism and Sport Board, alongside the Derbyshire County Council leader, who also sits there with me. And it's clear to me that he has a very passion for sports and arts. And I'd hope that we could transpire that to looking at some sort of scheme to support recognised specialists in their field from all demographics to be able to take up opportunities of learning for them. So that was something I wanted to bring to the attention of all members, but particularly it affects my division of Sutton West. And there's a number of pupils that live locally to Ashfield that will likely to be accepted in similar schemes. And I'd hope the County Council could be able to free up some of its many thousands of funding to recognise arts like we do sports. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hollis. Councillor David Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to bring to the Council's attention today the provision of youth services across the county, because for as long as I can remember, in Selston Parish particularly, we've had to support and fund and develop our own services. We do have Base 16, which is open for a limited 3 nights a week from around about 5:30 till about 9:30. But of late, particularly, especially after COVID, where people have been kept locked up in the homes for a long period of time, the rebound effect from that aspect for me in the rural area of Selston is that a group of teenagers from the age of about 14 to 18 who are mentored by older children into buying alcohol and drugs and stuff. So I'd like to see a review, and I invite Councillor Taylor to Selston to come and see the youth provision that we have and the other self-funded youth clubs that we have always had. One's done by the church and one's done by a local group of parents who were so fed up with the lack of youth service provision that they created their own group, who have always lambasted me for not supporting them because I support Base 16, which is the county service. But it's a very difficult age group from 14 to 18 across the county, as I'm sure you're all aware. You'll all have your own little pockets of antisocial behaviour, and I've brought it to the attention of the Police Crime Commissioner only last week in the Festival Hall at Ashfield about the lack of police numbers since 2015 and the diminishment of that number, and hoping that the escalation in police numbers and a visual presence will help to reduce antisocial behaviour in rural areas across the county, not just in Selston. and a plan to increase police numbers apparently is in operation. But when I have people at the staff at the local co-op who are being plagued by a bunch of 15-year-olds to 17-year-olds, it's very difficult for the rest of the residents in the parish whose mums, aunties, uncles and cousins and brothers work in that co-op, and it's a bit of a highlighted area. So where we don't have as much police provision as there would be within the urban conurbations, then antisocial behaviour rises in the areas that are less covered by the police authority. So I asked Councillor Taylor and the County Council to do a review of youth service provision in the more rural locations for that specific reason. And I welcome any suggestions from any other councillors across the county that they've tried in their divisions, because it's a problem that we do need to tackle, especially as we come out of COVID and the kids are out on the street more. And as we enter the dark winter nights, antisocial behaviour will only get worse, I'm afraid. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. We move on then to agenda item 6, which is presentation of petitions. I have been notified of 3 petitions by the deadline. Can I remind members that you have 1 minute limit to speak on each petition, and there is a maximum time limit of 15 minutes for this item. Councillor Andy Meakin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to present this petition with regards to the state of roads and pavements around the homesteads of Kirkby Ashfield. This is more than a petition. It's a dossier containing not just dozens of residents, but also photos. The homesteads is a complex for elderly. This makes its much more needed improvements to the broken roads and pavements even more important. I've included this in my RA's priorities for this year. It is that urgent. People have been injured as a result of a poor state of the roads and pavements. I look forward to a response and guarantee that residents in Kirkby will finally be listened to. I urge Council to act, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Sam Smith.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to present a petition calling for a residential parking scheme to be introduced along Beacon Hill Road between its junctions with Sleaford Road and Sherwood Avenue, which has been signed by 43% of the road's residents and has my full support. Most houses on this section of Beacon Hill Road do not have driveways, so often cannot park near their home due to parked commuters. A residential parking scheme will resolve this and improve their lives. Thank you.
Councillor Nigel Moxon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present this petition to you today requesting the speed limit on Old Mill Lane in Forest Town be reduced to 30 miles an hour. Now, those of you who know Mansfield well, you'll probably have come across the junction at the end of Barringer Road in Forest Town, and once you do, you avoid it forevermore. But residents around there can't avoid it and hold their lives in their hands when they're trying to pull out onto the main road, the fast-moving main road, or even particularly when they're trying to cross the road as a pedestrian. So reducing the limit here will alleviate the situation substantially. Thank you.
Can I ask that we resolve the petitions be referred to the appropriate committees for consideration, and a report will be brought back to the council in due course in accordance with standing orders? Everyone in favour? Unanimous. Agenda item 7 is employee recognition, and I call upon Councillor Ben Bradley MP, who will introduce the report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to move the recommendations on page 3 of the report, which is that the Council awards an additional day's leave to our employees to recognise the outstanding and ongoing contribution made by the Council's workforce since March 2020, when, of course, all hell broke loose and staff at Nottinghamshire County Council went into overdrive to support people across our communities to continue to deliver core services despite the challenges, to fire up all sorts of new support mechanisms for vulnerable people, to source PPE with award-winning success, volunteer at testing centres, support community groups to rally around and help each other, and much more. As the report notes, I recently sent out a personal message of thanks to staff across the council on behalf of all of us as members, and we've been looking at various ways that we can record this thanks, recognise the amazing work that so many have done, within the context and confines, obviously, of the ongoing challenges that we still face, and one that I hope that most residents will support. We've talked a lot about our gratitude, but it can't just be talk. COVID-19 continues to impact our residents and continues to make life very challenging for so many of our frontline staff, perhaps particularly across social care, adults and children's services, who are really at the forefront of this and tackling some of the toughest circumstances. It's absolutely right that these staff who have gone above and beyond, who continue to do so, are able to hear loud and clear today that we value their work, that we thank them for everything that they are doing, but also that this isn't just words, that we want to offer some tangible token of appreciation of everything that they do for local people. As the report explains, we've looked hard at various options and what is reasonable in terms of costs and safeguarding service delivery, whilst also being something tangible for our staff. I've heard some amazing stories of council staff going above and beyond throughout the pandemic, of social workers who've made themselves available 7 days a week to cover staffing shortfalls, who've been there on call, out doing their job at all hours of the day and night, to ensure that self-isolation or illness didn't prevent vulnerable residents from getting the care they need. It was a privilege to visit some of these staff at the MASH and our enablement service last week to hear about these challenges and about all the work they're doing now to help local people. I've heard stories of staff who gave up their evenings and weekends to man testing centres and latterly vaccine centres, staffs working immensely long hours, particularly in those early months, to stand up the vital services that were needed to ensure that residents could access support when it was needed. I think it's also important to combat some of the negative perceptions here too. I was disappointed to see some of the comments on social media when this news was published last week, though I do understand it. Many people have worked incredibly hard throughout the pandemic, not just council staff, and many are deserving of recognition too. That's, of course, absolutely true. But much of what I read in the negative comments were, to be honest, based on a false perception of what our staff do. We're very lucky across the public sector to have had a secure income throughout COVID. That much is true. But a number of residents suggested that all council staff have been working from home rather delivering services, they'd all been furloughed, or that they'd all been had an easy life over the last few months. I think it's really important to clarify this today. And to explain just how broad and varied our services are, to explain the extent of our frontline services, because sometimes when our services are targeted at the most vulnerable, adult social care, children's services, sometimes perhaps residents don't see the work that goes on if you're not directly affected by it. And perhaps this leads to a false image of what our teams do. But many of our staff work directly on the front line with some of the county's most vulnerable residents in some of the most difficult circumstances, with child safeguarding issues, elderly and isolated people, clinically vulnerable residents. It's difficult and stressful work at the best of times, never mind during COVID-19. Plus, of course, even many of those officers who were working from home, who were behind a desk perhaps, were organising and putting together vital local services to help our residents. High pressure, short timescales, big responsibilities, and in some cases, lives on the line. Our staff worked and continue to work incredibly hard. Some of the stereotypes that I've seen in some of the social media comments are simply not reflective of the facts. I think it's important to clarify that today. Other residents have said, well, what about other sectors and roles outside of the council? And yes, of course, it's true that many people have been working in the same circumstances or worse, and many are deserving of recognition. But obviously here at the council, we can control what we can control. We want to be a good employer. We want to recognise the hard work of our staff. That's not to the detriment of others, but simply to say that we don't employ others. We can't do it for staff that don't work for us. What I would say, though, if people are recognising that the council is, in fact, a good employer, that we do value our workforce, something they want to be a part of, they can head to our website and have a look at our vacancies, and we would no doubt welcome their interest in coming and being a part of it. Mr. Chairman, in closing, I'll just reiterate my thanks of the council, the council's leadership, the administration, to all of our staff across the whole wide variety of areas of work for their continued graft and commitment to local people. We talk about it a lot. I hope that this small token of appreciation is a benefit to some of them, that it offers maybe a day of calm in the eye of the storm, that it offers a chance to get out with the kids or whatever they may choose to do with it. And I know that colleagues across the chamber will want to amplify that message during today's debate.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. I call upon Councillor Gordon Wheeler to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased to second the motion, and I will speak now, if that's okay. Thank you. Rather than reserve my right. Chairman, as Chairman of Personnel Committee, I'm delighted to be seconding the proposal to award a day's leave to our excellent county council staff in recognition of the valuable contribution they made to maintaining our residents. Joyce, earlier on, when she spoke about our wonderful staff as she's walking across the bridge, just an example of a great workforce we have. Ben has just said, we look after our workforce, we value what they do, we also value the next phase of our workforce, be it our graduate scheme, thank you, or our apprenticeship scheme, and both. So it's an all-round effort. You know, we have had fabulous employees, and we like to think we are a great employer too. I'm aware that there's been a significant impact on many employees over the last 18 months as they have juggled their working lives with the challenge of additional caring responsibilities, homeschooling, and for some, sadly, personal loss. The homeschooling part, I saw yesterday, I spoke to someone yesterday in the HR team about homeschooling, and she said how challenging that was for her, and I well understand that. I have utmost admiration for our workforce, Mr. Chairman, how they have adapted, become even more resilient, and kept going as the pandemic continues. Our frontline workers rightly are heralded for the tireless work, as Ben has already said, in supporting the most vulnerable in our communities. I would also like to thank and mention a few services which also played a significant part in keeping people safe, well protected and informed. For example, staff at the Customer Service Centre who provide residents with initial lifeline support and have continued to deliver services on behalf of the Council and NHS. Answering queries on a vast and extraordinary range of issues. We had a presentation recently from the Personnel Committee from Marie, and it's just mind-boggling what they do. And we will be working with Marie and the team to understand more what they do and how we can, as a council, can support them. Believe me, that's got to happen and will happen. The heroic efforts made by colleagues in procurement. Now, if it just deviates just slightly at that point, the County Council, in partnership with the LRF, are winners of the COVID-19 Outstanding Response Awards. More about this will come at the next full council meeting. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the entire procurement team, led by Kaj, and to all those involved in winning this accolade. I very rarely, Mr. Chairman, set out to mention a single individual, but I can't let this moment pass but acknowledging the contributions made by James Silverton and his fantastic warehouse colleagues in coordinating and distribution of PPE equipment right across the county to keep our staff and our community safe. The back office staff will continue to support, and Ben alluded to this, and enable frontline service delivery, making sure people paid on time and the support they needed to continue to provide essential services. Staff in our Democratic Services team who worked very hard with us members, and supported us to ensure local democracy continued, albeit, sadly, in some cases, virtually for a time. But hopefully, that's largely a thing of the past. This list is not exhaustive, Mr. Chairman. It can't possibly be. As so many have stepped up and gone above and beyond what could reasonably be expected. Mr. Chairman, and just to finish off, this is why I consider it so important as benefits available to all our council staff, whatever their role, as everyone has made their contribution. Again, as the leader said, we really can't do much about those who don't work for us, but we will do all we can and we'll continue to all those who do work for us. And certainly hope that people will use the opportunity to spend the day however they wish to, make up for time with their families. I mentioned earlier on the time to spend homeschooling, get out and enjoy themselves now that they can. And to tell them how much they appreciate it, how grateful we are to them for doing what they've done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Conscious of the time and that we have guests with us, I will take one more speaker before we adjourn for the drinks reception and lunch, and that's Councillor Powell.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I don't want to hold up people when they're going for a drink. We're all very happy to support this recommendation. The commitment of our dedicated employees have demonstrated their work and their willingness to be flexible and take on new challenges in an environment that's not been easy or risk-free has been absolutely wonderful. So thank you to them. However, I've got a request for every councillor here today, and I don't want to get into party political spat, but if we are truly to recognise the great work of our large and varied workforce, we must champion their work at every available opportunity outside this chamber. I know many of us do. An extra day off is good, but it's not a substitute for decent pay. Local authority pay has fallen by almost a quarter in real terms since 2009. I know our budget's been reduced too, and times are hard, and we don't have the funds from government to give them a decent pay rise, and council budgets have been massively cut in real terms too. And I think Ben's words were good. You know, you talk about the stereotype and the misunderstanding some people do have about our work. And I think that's because we don't seem to be able to shout about it enough. I don't think people really understand what we do and see the importance of the work that we do. So we must all please make the case on behalf to government. I know that there are many people out there on low incomes, and you know, you mentioned the social media threads, Ben, that are struggling to make ends meet outside this council too, and we'll certainly be speaking up on this side of the chamber for them later in this meeting. And Labour councillors will continue to speak up for them. There are far too many people struggling to make ends meet in this country. But this is my opportunity, in the context of this report, as Gordon's just said, to speak up for our Notts County Council staff. And this will impact on our residents, the situation we're in. Recruiting and keeping staff in some areas, particularly social care, is a challenge in many areas of our work, and we won't be able to continue to provide the service to our residents. This will impact on our residents if it doesn't change for the better, and we can't recruit good staff on decent pay. So let's make that case everywhere they can. And thank you again to our dedicated and hard-working staff, and I hope you enjoy your day off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fold. Can we now adjourn into the Assembly room, and then those of us who are taking lunch, can we all be back in the chamber by 1:30?